Hi, hi. Happy Wednesday, everybody. How are you? I'm just going to give people a second to join here. Today, I'm talking about mindset, a mindset hack that I like to use that I find to be super, well, this mindset pattern I find to be super common. It's very human. Let's see if you can see my pretty painting while I'm at it here. I've changed my painting behind me, but I'm also changing how I hang it. So I feel like every time I go live, it's in a different spot. I will get it the way I want it this week. Anyway, today I'm talking about one of my favorite mindset hacks for success. And as I said, I think this is a very human pattern. We all do it. So let's just be really caring and compassionate with ourselves and each other when we make these, when we act on or recognize these limiting beliefs, which is a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. But I think mindset is something that we're always going to all be working on. And we're always going to have an opportunity for improvement. And so I think it's really important when you are doing mindset work or even just thinking about yourself. If you're live, please say hi. I'd love to say hello to you. Even if you're just simply thinking about yourself, that we're being very compassionate and caring with ourselves around how we're showing up, what's going on in our minds, what's going on in our thought processes, because one of the most important, this is not the one I want to talk about today, but one of the best things you can do for yourself from a mindset perspective is stop making yourself wrong. Another way to say that is be kind and compassionate with yourself, be curious about yourself and the mindset. If you're live, please say hi.
Oh gosh,
I'd love to say hello to you.
I'm playing myself.
Hold on. Okay, about the mindset work that you're doing, or even just the limiting beliefs that you notice, because when you're judging yourself on top of having the actual thought, it's really just adds another layer of complexity and one more thing to work on. Hello, Lori. Welcome. So we're going to start this conversation by saying people who have this thought process, there's nothing wrong with them. In fact, they're very human. The biggest trick around mindset work is to start to be aware of where your mindset is at any given point in time, what patterns you specifically have. Awareness is the first step, right? And then I'm going to talk a little bit today also about, so first I'm going to start, by talking about this pattern that I see in a lot of people. I see in myself, I see in my clients, you will probably see in yourself. But I'm also going to talk about, okay, so what are some things you can do about it? And that's where I'm going to get to my favorite mindset hack. But one of the things, and I'm only going to speak about one mindset issue today. What I find, particularly in myself, but also in my clients, is a repeating theme, is the idea of what is called dichotomous thinking. It can also be called cognitive dichotomy. It can also be called polarized thinking. But it's when we have a thought or a thought process or a pattern of thought that is in one extreme or the other. It's black or it's white. It's either or it's or. It's good or it's bad. It's one or the other. And my favorite one, all or nothing. Okay, so all of these are what is called dichotomous thinking, which is in essence, taking the way that you see yourself or the way that you see the world, or the way that you see a specific circumstance. And the way that your brain decides to make sense of it is, well, it's either in one category or the other. And what I find oftentimes happens, I'm going to get a lot of examples today. What I find oftentimes happens with this either or thinking, also kind of comes down to, I can have either this or that. I can do either this or that. It implies what is possible is this or that. And I'm going to give you some simple examples and then some more sneaky, like ones that I've seen show up in business, and some for myself. But what I find is, on its surface, when we think about this kind of thinking, a lot of people are like, yeah, that's not my issue, right? And it may not be. There are a lot of different mindset, or let me just say it this way, there's a lot of different ways of looking at thinking and thought. Lots of different like categories of thought, right? There's another one could be only looking at the positive or only looking at the negative, right? Neither of those is ideal and actually real or realistic, right? You're not looking at the perspective, the situation with complete real truth when you only filter the positive or you only filter the negative, right? So there's all these different categories of like mindset issues or limiting belief, like thought processes. Okay. And this one is dichotomous thinking. The name's not important. Extremism, absolute thinking, polarized thinking, I think is an easier way to think about it. And a lot of times, just like anything, many people have like a go-to type of thought process that they will go to. And this is one that I think a lot of people have and don't realize it, because on its surface, it seems really obvious, right? So I'm going to give you some silly examples, but then we're going to start to dive into some ways that it can get trickier, ways that it can really play with you. So let me think where I want to start with my examples here. Yeah, so I like this one too. Like, okay, all or nothing is a really big one, I think, for me. But when I think about things like it's either flawless or it's defective, right? How many times have you had a piece of machinery, like a kitchen appliance or even a car that works, and then when it starts to have a problem, you almost start to go to, well, this is just, I got a lemon. This thing doesn't work anymore, it's broken, right? When the truth, that might be true, but the truth may actually be, it was a perfectly good piece of equipment. It's now having an issue that needs some maintenance, and then it will continue, right, to be okay. But sometimes we take things, once they are no longer good or perfect, we decide they are bad or imperfect or wrong or lemons or defective, right? Have you ever liked someone or had a general, maybe you don't know someone very well, like maybe an acquaintance, and you've just always kind of thought, yeah, they seem like a nice person. And then you learn one thing about them that you don't like, and you decide that they are a terrible person based on this one piece of information. Right? It's very easy. It's a very natural thing to do. We're not going to judge ourselves for judging others, right? But it's very natural to just judge ourselves, someone else, a situation based on one point of data. Now, we know that if we zoom out and we look at that situation in total, we know, okay, I don't actually know her. Just because she did this one thing that I would never do or that I disagree with, it doesn't mean she's a bad person, or it doesn't mean that she also doesn't have good to her, right? The truth is, people have good and bad, right? People do good. If you want to go to that level, people do good things and bad things, right? I think that's not, even saying good things and bad things and are good and bad is part of this dichotomous thinking, but I'm just trying to play in it to just explain it, right? But the truth is, we've all done some really great things that we're really proud of. And we've all done some really not great things, right? Does that mean that any one of those behaviors or actions means that we are good or bad, right? So when we think about dichotomous thinking around ourselves and around others, are we taking, for example, there's lots of ways to have dichotomous thinking, but for ourselves and others, are we taking two extreme categories deciding about that person or ourself based on one thing. All right, and I'm going to give you a couple more examples. Yeah. So one of the things that I find is people will do something, maybe let's bring it back to business. Let's say you have a conversation with a difficult client and you really wish you would behave differently. Maybe you got triggered, maybe you got defensive, whether it's a difficult client or a difficult service provider or your accountant because you don't want to pay taxes or whatever, right? But let's just say you come into contact with someone in your business and you have a difficult conversation. You walk away from that conversation and you look at yourself and you go, really, I could have handled that better. I flew off the handle about this. I said that. That's actually not true. God, I'm a bad person. I'm not a good business person. I don't know what I'm doing. I got to close this business down, right? I'm being dramatic, but how many people have had those thoughts come through their head? I'm not saying that you necessarily acted on it, but it's very easy to take ourselves too seriously and to judge ourselves based on one action, and then to decide that, we're bad or we don't know how to do something when we just didn't do the best job, but probably we were still doing our best in that moment anyway. Or to make some very dramatic conclusion based on that, which puts us into a good or bad category, so to speak, when that's really not the truth, right? Another favorite example I like around dichotomous thinking has to do with mindset work, okay? Oftentimes I will work with someone as a client when I'm coaching them, and we will surface a topic, an insecurity, for example. Let's use that as an example. Let's say I have a client who really has a hard time valuing her services when it comes to pricing, when it comes to feeling that she's giving her clients valuable support. Like on one hand, she knows that she's a good practitioner, but on the other hand, she can't kind of let herself own that and feel really confident and clear as an expert, right? Let's say that's what's happening. And as we talk about it, something comes up in her past and she goes, oh yeah, I've had to deal with this before. This mindset issue has plagued me for years. We think it stems from this childhood trauma, okay? So often, I've done this before, you guys. I hear this from my clients all the time. So often, when we have what seems to be an old issue or an old topic that we've worked before, when it comes up again, so often we decide dichotomously that issue, all the work we did on that issue was shit and it didn't help and we didn't do it right. And so because we haven't mastered this topic, we failed. And all the work that we've done in the past means nothing. And I can't believe I'm still dealing with this issue. What's wrong with me? I thought I worked on this issue years ago. I thought I resolved it or mastered this issue of valuing myself, not feeling confident, not feeling good enough. And it all comes from this experience with my mother in my childhood, for example, right? It's very easy to use dichotomous thinking processes when we're thinking about ourselves, specifically when we're doing mindset work, to decide that everything we've done doesn't matter and that it's all or nothing. It's either mastered or we've failed. We either have this issue or we don't. When the truth is, being a human and evolving and learning and growing is a process. It doesn't have checkboxes, right? That's not to say that we can't make major progress and move to new topics and evolve past certain things. Most of us have a few core topics or issues or challenges or themes in our lives that will continue to be with us, not because we're bad, not because we don't know how to fix them, not because something's wrong with us, but because that's just what we're here to learn this go round. And I love working with people in their businesses because it pulls some of that up to be looked at and worked on and evolved around and processed through. But it doesn't mean that you didn't do any work on this area, right? Like this example, this hypothetical client that I came up with who's not confident in her work, maybe she probably never would have been able to start a business and be this healing practitioner if she hadn't done all this work in advance on this area of, valuing herself, understanding who she is as a soul and how magnificent and powerful she is. If she hadn't done the work that she did up until this point, the business wouldn't even be here to be surfacing this issue at a deeper level or at a next level to be looked at so that you do progress more and more towards mastery, right? But again, this dichotomous thinking process that comes in, this pattern that some people have is around mindset work. I love it. It's like mindset work about mindset work. But these limiting belief patterns that pop up that say, something's wrong with me because I should have already done this. So my dichotomous thinking is you've either mastered this thing around mindset or you've failed. And the truth, my friends, about most things in life, sorry, not sorry, is they fall in a grayer area than black and white, right? The truth is, yeah, maybe she hasn't mastered it. I don't really like that word, right? Because that implies that you have to like graduate and fill checked boxes, which doesn't really exist in mindset work. But maybe she hasn't mastered it because there's still room to grow. But for sure, she hasn't failed. She's on a process. She's made a lot of progress and she's been given an opportunity to practice it further. But the brain, and this is not to make anything wrong, dichotomous thinking is, go do research if you're interested in the brain, but, we still evolved from cave people and they had a lot of, let me say it this way, we still have a lot of processes and ways of being in our brains that kept us safe back then from a tiger chasing us, right? And in this example, part of the way that the brain keeps us safe is it categorizes things very quickly with that's why that we have trouble in our society with labels, right? The brain just wants to understand, what are you, male or female? If that's why adding additional genders to the checkboxes now is having some people confused. Their brain wants to understand A or B. Well, the truth is there's like 20 options now, right? There always has been, but the brain wants to know male or female, black or white, under 18, over 18, liberal or conservative, right? We're forcing a lot of people in the United States right now to pick a side when most people, I would guess, don't agree with every single thing on every single side, right? But we want it to be that way, and that's the way that we argue. I had another piece. Okay, so that's one example around mindset work is, did you master it or you failed? Okay, the truth of dichotomous thinking is that you've oversimplified into one category or another, right? Your brain has done this. And then what happens when we have a thought process that isn't helpful? Then we take that thought process and we use it, we decide it's truth, okay? We decide it's truth, and then we make decisions based on that truth instead of on reality. So in my hypothetical example of my client who didn't feel confident in her work, perhaps she might throw in the towel and be like, screw it, I've already failed. Why even bother? For example. It's a dramatic example. It's hypothetical. I made it up. But it's an example of the way that our brain works. We have these thought processes. We want to simplify things into categories. And then when we decide that it's that black or white, we decide what category we're in. Okay, I'm in this category, and therefore I have to make a decision and take action based on this. And that's where I see a lot of business owners take action that doesn't actually serve them or their business. So Couple other things about, let me give you a couple more examples. And then we'll get to so what do you do about it, right? Awareness is step one. What do you do about it? Learning more about the ways in which these thought processes could show up is step one, really. Learning and being aware, because we probably all have something working in our brains that's dichotomous, whether it's a big issue or a small one, or whether it just comes up and then we go, wait, that's not true. And then we move on with our lives, right? Let's see. Ways I've seen this show up. We already talked about mindset. Oh my gosh, I see this all the time. I have done this myself. You set an income goal, for example. Let's say you want to make, I don't know, $10,000 months. Okay, you set a 10K a month income goal. You achieve that goal, let's say for 2 or 3 months. And then on, let's say the 4th month, you make like $7,000 a month. Deciding that you're either a success or a failure based on this one thing is dichotomous thinking. Okay, can you see that? I achieved my goal, I achieved my goal, I achieved my goal. I didn't quite achieve my goal. I'm a failure. Because I'm either a success or a failure. And if this month I didn't achieve my goal and I look at it in this tiny little way, I'm a failure. Or I didn't achieve it this month. That means I'm never going to achieve it again. That means I'm either a moneymaker or I'm poor. And shit, this month means I'm going to be poor. Right? Can you see how your brain can, and it's much easier to see this in other people than it is easier to see in yourself, right? But I see a lot of people get really excited about the money they're making. And then the minute they have a less than perfect month, they flip out because they then think my momentum is crap. I had a dip, even if the dip isn't all that much. It's never going to be like this, right? It's either black or white. I'm either going to be successful or I'm going to fail, right? And the truth is, growing and scaling a business, I don't care how long you've been in business and I don't care what your income is at this point. You could be making pennies or you could be making millions. There is always a point where as you grow and things shift and scale and change, your income isn't like, for most small businesses, depending on your business model, but for most small businesses, it's going to adjust over time and it's going to go up and it's going to go down. And it's more important to zoom out and look at the total and the patterns than it is to look too smallly, I want to say, too like microscopically at one data point that does not imply cause and effect, right? So I'm getting way too complicated into this, but again, can you see how all of these types of thought processes boil up into it's either this or this. I'm either making 10K months or I'm not. And so I'm going to be, throwing a pity party when I make 7K. But before I set this goal, I was only making 5K, but I'm going to decide that 7K is bad now because only 10K is good. I'm getting a little trickier, right? But can you see how all that boils up to I'm either making 10K months and I'm great and I'm happy, or I'm miserable because I'm not. You could make $9,970 and maybe you would still be upset about that, right? It's natural, it's normal. This is why it's a good idea to have a coach of some sort, to have a colleague that you can bounce ideas off of and share these things with, because other people will start to see them before you do. And other people can remind you, for example, in this 10K month example, other people can remind you like, wait a minute. Are we really going to be upset about this 7K month? Hold on, let's come into perspective, right? Because the 7K month is a gray area, right? If we've decided 2K months are not enough and 10K months are, then 7 in this dichotomous perspective, 7 is a failure. When the truth is, 7 is in the gray area. We get to decide what we want to about 7. Most of life is 7. Most of business is 7. Most of it is gray. It is not either or. Our brains want to make it either or. And when we as business owners make decisions, create strategies based on the wrong data point, a small data point, an emotional reaction, dichotomous thinking, it makes it harder to run a business. It makes it more chaotic in your mind, and you run a less effective business when you make your decisions based on these things. And that's why I'm trying to bring this to the surface, because the more you can be aware of these kinds of dichotomous thoughts, not to be afraid of them, but when you can catch them, you can go, wait a minute. Before I go back to the drawing board after a 7K month and decide that my strategy's shit, I have to market completely differently, my graphics must be wrong, so let's call, my team who does graphics and tell them they have to change everything, right? Before I make a decision based on that, it's helpful to zoom out and understand the truth. So I'm gonna go now to my little hack. This is my favorite mindset hack for success. This is one of my favorite mindset hacks in general, business and life. And I didn't come up with this. This is Byron Katie's work. She's a woman. Her name is Byron Katie. And she calls it the work. She's got several books out there. You can read her books, but you can also just Google the work, and you'll get online like a quick synopsis of her, like 3 steps, 5 steps. I'm just going to talk about 1 step today. It's too much to go into right now. But it's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's basically 3 or 5 questions that you ask yourself once you find a thought that comes up. And it helps you piece out what's really happening. It's very simple. And you may have heard me say this before. Is it true? This is not groundbreaking questions today, but it is so powerfully impactful. One of the things that I tell my clients all the time is you can make a small adjustment in your business or your calendar. I had a really great conversation this week with one of my clients about her calendar, and we made seemingly tiny adjustments to her calendar that someone else might never have noticed. And it is going to make a huge impact on her business. And it's already made a huge impact on her stress levels. So small things, big impact. One of my favorite things. So back to Byron Katie. Is it true? I had a 7K month this month. I failed. Or my marketing, just to go back to the 2 things, like I'm either a success or a failure. I'm happy because I make 10K months, or I'm sad because I make less than 10K months. Or what was the other one I said? My marketing's working because I'm making 10K months. My marketing's failing because I'm not making 10K months, right? If these are the thought processes that are happening, when presented with a 7K month, Byron Katie's question, is it true that a 7K month means I'm a failure? Is it true that a 7K month means my marketing isn't working? Is it true? Okay, a lot of times when I ask myself the question, I kind of want to answer with, might be, right? Because the reason we're asking the question is we know it's probably not, right? But we're speaking to, let's give ourselves a lot of credit. We're speaking to the part of ourselves that believes this. We might have other parts of ourselves that don't believe this thought. But that doesn't mean you don't have mindset work, right? Because oftentimes, how many times have you been aware of something and still can't resolve it or make progress on it, right? So one of the things I like to do with my clients, and you can do this on your own as well at whatever level you want, is to talk to that part, ask that part what's going on. So in this case, we're asking that part who thinks this false belief, is that true? Is that true that you're now a failure because you only made $7,000 this month? And again, a lot of times when I do this for myself, the first time I want to say it is like, yeah, it is. Or it might be, right? And then my favorite second question is it really true? you have to ask yourself again. And this is where it gets interesting. And that alone is a beautiful journaling exercise. A lot of people like to journal, by the way. One of the things I've done, for those of you who've been with me this summer, you know that I injured my neck in like the end of May, I think, or sometime in June. And all summer I've been dealing with that and not able to work on the computer and not able to text people the way that I want. And I just really had to change the way that I operate at work and in life. And it's been really hard. Imagine taking your laptop or your phone away, or use it, but only when you use it, you're in pain. And I've had to make a lot of changes. I feel like that could be a whole nother live. Why was I telling you this? Oh, golly. This summer. Oh, come on, Laura. I had a really good point coming. Hold on. Oh, it's going to come back. Okay, I'm going to come back to it. Anyway, my point is, the second question, is it really, if you're journaling and you can't, or you don't like journaling, one of the things I've switched to lately is doing all voice memo journaling, because I couldn't use my neck. I couldn't use my arms. I couldn't use my laptop. I couldn't use my phone typing in any way, shape, or form. Even dictating was hard for me because I still had to use my head to look at the screen. So I would lay down or stand up and I would just speak into my voice memo. So little side note, if you don't like to journal, see if you can do it verbally out loud to yourself and just record it somewhere. So this is a great opportunity to have a conversation with yourself, whether it's out loud, whether it's in journaling, whether it's with a friend. Is it really true? Is it true? And then is it really true? And then what it forces you to do is to come into what are the facts of the situation. One of the other things I like to recommend to my clients, and you've probably heard me say several times, hi, Dina, is that one of the best things you can do for yourself when you're doing mindset work, once you find the thing that needs attention, is to start to collect evidence of the way that you would like to think about things, the new way of thinking, or better yet, what is actually true, right? So in this case, I've had this thought process that making 10K months is the only way to be successful and make me happy, and anything under 10K is not going to make me happy, and it means I'm not successful. And one of those versions. When I make 7K and I want to judge myself for that and be sad and move myself to the sad category because it's either sad or happy, it's either failure or success. When I want to do that, the first thing I can do is go, is it really true that this 7K month is a failure? Is it true? Yeah, it wasn't what I wanted. Okay, but is it really true? Well, I did make 10K for 3 months before I failed. Okay, so is it true that you're a failure? Okay, maybe not. Is it really true that you're a failure? Well, I guess maybe I did achieve something for 3 months, so maybe this doesn't mean I'm a failure, right? Having these little conversations with that small, childish, less evolved part is critical, critical, critical. You can journal, you can have a friend ask you, you can talk it out in your head, you can voice memo journal it. Is it really true? And then what I like to do is to gather evidence, as I said a minute ago, for the other way. So maybe I want to feel good about this 7K. I don't know why this is my example today. Maybe I want to feel good about this 7K. And I would rather move my 7K if I'm going to stay with dichotomous thinking. Well, let's say it this way. I'd rather not feel shitty about the 7K and move it into the sad failure. My marketing doesn't work bucket. So how could I feel better about it? Well, first off, I could decide that it doesn't go over there. What's the evidence that I have that it doesn't go over there? Well, it was the first time in 4 months that I had that failure, if it must be a failure. So if it took 4 months to have one fail, that's 1 out of 4. I'm only 25% of a failure, right? Really going detailed by the logic really does help reason with this part that's attached to what it believes is the truth of the situation, which is you're either in this bucket or this bucket. Then start to collect evidence for the other. What if it was okay to celebrate this 7K month? Because maybe if I look at what was before that, maybe I was only making 2K or 5K or whatever it is before I started hitting what I would say are consistent 10K months for 3 months. And then you had a dip that wasn't that much of a dip, right? So that means that if you can make 3 10K months and a 7K month, you can do it again. Then that's only 2 out of 8 months that you're less than 10. And I bet the numbers at that point are average 10, right? So then I can use that evidence, that data that's actually true, and make a data journal, make an evidence journal, make a list of evidence that supports the new thought. And go back to it as much as you can. Give yourself an opportunity to celebrate what you really should be. I don't like that word, but 7K is a celebration, particularly in this example. Okay, let me know if you have questions or comments. I'm just going to check here and then I'm going to keep going. I've got a little bit more here. Hello, Allison. Allison says, makes sense. Hello, Dina. All right, let me know if you have more questions or if you have examples of your own dichotomous thinking. I'm going to give you another one of mine. Actually, no, let me give you another couple. I'm going to come back to this. So one of the other ones that I've seen a lot in my clients, particularly lately, there's something about this time of year that I think, because maybe it's because people take a vacation and then they come back and they kind of feel like they want to refresh things at work. But I've seen a lot of my clients lately, their 2 buckets are something like, I either know a very detailed plan about how I'm going to get to my next step or my next chapter vision, or I know nothing. I either know everything and have a plan, or I know nothing. What's the truth of most people's experience? I know some things and I still have some other things to figure out. That's the space that most entrepreneurs live in the entire time. That's the nature of entrepreneurship. For those of us, me included, who come from a space in corporate where you never execute a plan unless you have it all planned out. Entrepreneurship gets to be different. It gets to be creative. You have, especially for those of us with small businesses, the ability to motivate your forces to make a shift or implement something or make a change is a lot easier in a small business than a big business. I spent years helping businesses just make a plan to make a shift. Whereas like I can spend 2 weeks with a client here and we can not only make a plan to make a shift, we can start moving on it. It's amazing. There's so many benefits to being in the creative and entrepreneurial space. And it comes with some things that make life uncertain and things that aren't formulaic and step by step. And I, for one, don't really like plans, but I will tell you, I've fallen into the trap of this thought process too, which is I'll be like, well, I don't really know. I don't know. I don't have the whole plan yet, so I can't do it. And I don't really know how I'm going to do it and blah, blah, blah. And I can't tell you how many times I've come back to myself, or I've had a coach come back to me, or if I've come back to a client with this type of thought process and I've said, hold on. You actually know a lot about what you want this next chapter to be. Move on that. The parts and pieces that you don't know yet, and I prefer haven't yet figured out because it's not yet time to figure them out, will fall into place as you move forward. And so you know all that you need to know right now. How many times have you said, I don't know? if somebody had said to you, is that true? Is that really true? Okay, yeah, I do know something, right? I do know something. And then I think sometimes what I work with my clients on is about getting comfortable with, oh, okay, I do know something. I know what I know. Let me get it clear in my head, because I'm so focused on what I don't know that I forget what I do know. I do know all these things. And then I get to decide within myself as a business owner, what business decision am I going to make now based on what I do know and what's left to figure out? What's the best strategy? Does one more thing need to be determined before moving forward? Or do I have enough to move forward, even if it's tiny baby steps forward? Maybe it's time to share your ideas with somebody else to help you progress forward, right? But do I know enough to be able to proceed with whatever the next step is? There's so many times I find people think that they have to have it figured out in detail before they can move forward. And therefore, or the opposite is true, I don't know anything. And I hear it a lot with new business owners. I don't really know who I want to serve. I don't know who my niche is. I need to get my website finished first. I need to figure all these things out of how I'm going to speak about myself as a business owner, what services I provide. Yes, the truth is you do need to know those big pieces. And those things can change over time. You just have to choose. It's not about like knowing and like committing for 20 years to serving women, for example. You could start by serving women and then see how you evolve. But we get so wrapped up around not only having to know and be committed 100% to something, but we also have to have a detailed plan around it. And by the time you do that, it's going to be 6 months and your business will still be sitting on your plate with nothing, right? And then I find other entrepreneurs, particularly those that have an established business that's been around for years. Usually the more years that I find, the more of this happens. It's like, because we've been doing it X way and that's worked and we've been established business owners, in order to make a change, it feels kind of like what I was talking about when I used to consult to big companies, and we would like very slowly make a tiny shift, which really was just making a decision to change, right? Sometimes when we're used to doing something a certain way and we know everything about it because we've had 10 years of putting it together, we think, well, until I have this detailed of a plan for my next chapter of my business or my next offer or whatever is next for you in your work, I can't get moving, and therefore I know nothing, right? I either know all of it and I have a detailed plan, or I don't know anything and I'm just lost. I'm stuck is another way to say that. Are you really stuck? Is it true? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. I don't know anything about this. Is it really true? You know enough to know you want to make a change. That's something, okay? Build that list of evidence. It's the most helpful thing you can do, because imagine for a minute, a brilliantly talented entrepreneur sitting in front of you. They have so much to offer the world. They've been offering so much to the world for, let's say, 10 years, and they're ready to make an additional new offer, new arm to their business, what have you. Imagine if they waited 2 years to have the perfect plan first. Like, we'd all be missing out. We'd all be missing out. And the people that I find are the most successful, use your own definition of success, but the people that I find are the most successful are willing to go with a half-baked idea, willing to go with a partial plan. And it doesn't mean go lift off. It doesn't mean you have to fly the plane while building it. Right? Let me use a different example. It doesn't mean you have to start, if let's say you want to put a group coaching program together, it doesn't mean you have to start coaching those people instantly while you're still building the program. But if you pretty much know what's in there, you can start talking to clients about it. See if they might be the next evolution for them in working with you. Start putting the bullet points on your website. Start working with your team to start getting that cleared up. Maybe your team will come up with questions that will help you answer and get it all sort of finished, planned, right? Don't let somebody be missing out on your genius and what you have to offer just because you haven't made the detailed plan yet. Okay, and then one of my favorite ones for myself is if I don't do it myself, how do I want to say this? Oh, there's a couple layers in there. I can either do it alone or do it with someone else, but then that means I didn't do it on my own, right? So for me, it's about asking for help. It's probably a better way to say that, but I'd be curious to see, where are you? Most entrepreneurs are highly independent. Highly, highly, highly independent. It is both my genius and my fatal flaw. I've worked really hard on this too, and I can see it in anyone. Those of you who are my clients, you know I've pointed out because I can see it. If I think I should be doing something, it's really hard for me to ask for somebody to help me. And what I've learned, if I apply this strictly to business, the first time that I ever hired anyone on my team to help me was when I was like exhausted, worn out, doing all the things. And I was like, I cry, uncle, I need some help. That's how I finally hired my first teammate. By the way, celebrating, we have a new teammate. I will be making some announcements down the road, but I now have 2 teammates. I'm super excited. Welcome, Casey. But when I first did, it was like, it was like, it forced me to get over the asking for help problem because I was just so tired. And it worked out beautifully. And sometimes you have to wear yourself out to go to the other side of that dichotomous thinking, or to go to the healthy way of being, to take the healthy action. But how many of you, this plays out in entrepreneurs in so many different levels, right? Like another one sort of similar is I either have to be all in my business and work at like 100% of the time, or full time, or 40 hours a week, or whatever that means, or I have to go, and it has to pay my bills, or I have to go get a full-time job back in corporate, for example. Most people I know didn't do either one of those things. Most people I know did something in the middle, where they had a source of income or 2, and they built their business. And then those things shuffled and changed over time. And then they became full-time in their business, right? That's dichotomous thinking. I can either work in my business, or I have to go back to corporate where I don't want to be, right? Or I have to get a full-time job that I don't, the implication is do work that I don't want to do, or do work that I love, right? I can either be fulfilled and love my work, or I can be successful and make money. That was one for me. The middle does exist. You can make money and be successful at work that you love. You can. Let's see. Do I have another example? Do you guys have any examples? Let me just check. And then I'm going to go back to my little hack. Okay, if you guys have any examples that you want to share, great. Oh, here's another one. This might piss some people off, but I think it's a great example, right? This is not about business, but I want to just give one more example of dichotomous thinking, because I talked about seeing people as black or white, seeing people as good or bad. And one that rocked my world growing up in the States, growing up in the 80s, I grew up on the family values, and I don't want to put in quotation marks. I grew up on the family values and the, frankly, like racial groundbreaking work that the Cosby Show was. And we grew up thinking that this was a salt of the earth dad, you know, educator, loved kids, kids say the darndest things, family, you know, sitcom. And all of that is true. And he was not a perfect man. I mean, we found out in the last, 4 years, he did some really, really, really bad stuff, particularly to women. It's very hard to reconcile those two things. You're either a good person or you're a bad person. He's a great example of someone who did both good, to just put it into those buckets, both good and bad. You can't give him a bucket. You want to. I want to put him in the bad bucket. But he did some things, and neither can be discounted. You can get mad at me, it's fine. But it is intended to push your buttons a little bit, because you want your brain. I'm still struggling with this thing with him, right? Your brain wants to put somebody in a category. And you want to take all the bad that someone did and negate what they did that was good, or all the good that somebody did and negate, and la, 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 I won't hear what they did that's bad, right? Is it really true? Can you really put somebody or anything in one bucket or another? Okay, sorry, I'm controversial today. Let's see. So just in summary, we've talked about a lot of examples of dichotomous thinking. I wanted to do that because I think it's fair. This is a very easy one to, on its surface, think that you don't have any of those thought processes. I was one of them. And then the more I learned about it, I realized it was one of my go-tos, because I oftentimes find that my unhealthy beliefs are very limiting. I can either have this or this. I can either have work I love, or I can support myself financially. That was my big one for even starting this business. I can have a large following, or I can be successful in my business and make a ton of money, or I can have a work-life balance. Is that true? Can you only have one or the other? I can market myself in the ways that I see other people doing, because I know those to be true. I know those to be tried and true practices. I have to market myself in this way and wear myself out, and it doesn't feel authentic and it feels like slimy sales. Or I can be poor, right? We know that's not true. We know that there are lots of ways to market yourself and get creative and find clients that don't have to be slimy, right? I'm being dramatic, but I see this playing out all the time in business. You might notice it first in a personal life topic, and then I ask you to ask yourself, how does this translate into my business? Where does this mindset show up at work? It's a great one. And then vice versa. When I'm in my business and I notice a thought process like this, where does this show up in my life? It's very, very helpful. I hope this was helpful. I love the Is It True? Again, that's Byron Katie's work. It's not mine. But I know a lot of people that use her exercises and practices. She presents it in a very clear and simple way. You can read her books, but like I said, you can also just go Google her questions, 3 questions or 5 questions, but those are 2. Is it true? And is it really true? I think one of the other ones is, who would I be without this thought? Freaking love that. Who would I be without the thought that I either make 10K months or I'm a failure? I'd be free. I'd be happy. I would accept my income for what it is. I would have more joy in my life. I'd be excited about every piece of income that comes in, right? Whatever the answer is. She's got some good stuff. And I love, love, love to use her work and her practices with my clients and with myself, because it's just an easy hack. It cuts straight to, the truth of the truth and the reality of the situation or the world or yourself, where our brains want to make it false. Our brains want to limit ourselves. Our brains want to tell us we're bad or punish ourselves or over categorize and oversimplify that which really is, again, life is gray, business is gray. That's why I believe that you can create a business in the way that you want to. You can create a marketing strategy that works for you. You can choose those things that work for you. You can set your calendar the way that it works for you. You can work with the types of people that work for you, and you can still make money. And that's one of the things that I'm the most passionate about. That's one of the things that I'm the most passionate about helping my clients with. And I think too, when you're doing this work with a coach, work with a friend, work with a colleague, because they will help you to see that which you can't see. They probably also could offer additional evidence. I think that's a lot of times what a coach does. Hey, I see this thought process. Is it really true? And this is what I actually see as the truth, the new evidence, the evidence for the new way of thinking, which is looking at it with the truthful perspective. I think a lot of times coaches, friends, colleagues can see that which you can't see. So with that said, I have one slot left for one-on-one coaching. If you're interested, drop me in line. I'll put the little link here in the comments if you want to schedule a call with me. No pressure, just 30 minutes of finding out what's going on with your business and if we would be a good fit for working together. And I've got another live coming up for you guys next week, next Wednesday. I can't remember what the topic is right now, but I will be back next Wednesday, same time, every Wednesday. If there's a topic, I've already created all my topics for September, but if there's a topic that you would like me to cover, or if there's a subtopic, like maybe you had a question about today, please let me know. I'm really open to letting these lives be, I mean, they already are for you. If there's something that you want to hear me speak on, or questions that you have about being a business owner, having a healthy mindset, running a team, putting a marketing strategy together, coming up with what your strategic priorities are, having a clear head as a business owner. These are all some of my favorite topics, and then pick your own. So shoot me any questions or thoughts that you have. Thank you for being here. It's lovely to see you all. I just want to see if there's any more comments before we close. Okay, I'm not seeing any more comments. So I will close. Have a great week. I will talk to you all soon. Much love.